Welcome to the 64 Tacos Podcasts. This is episode 106. 64 Tacos Book Club. Out of the Silent Planet, Part 1.
All right, welcome to another 64 Tacos podcast. We are branching out into books. So we are checking out a book. We're going to read it over the course of several podcasts, maybe I think 5 or 6. The book that we have selected is actually the book that I selected, which is Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. It's a book that I read when I was young, so maybe,
Love is a Battlefield.
That's exactly what I was getting at. How did you know? I think I was probably, like 13 or 14 when I read it. And I think I read it because I liked Narnia so much. So I was like, cool, science fiction. I like science fiction too. And same author. I don't remember many of the details. I just remember really liking it when I was a teenager. So I don't think anybody else has read it. Is that true?
That is correct.
I had not read it. No.
It's true.
Okay, great. It's not very long. I think my edition is all of 160 pages. But it gives us a chance to kind of all four of us go through it and talk about what we like and see what we think. Our first section here is the first 5 chapters. We each went through and read and or listened to them over the last week or so. So first we'll do a brief synopsis here of what actually happens. The story begins with a character named Ransom, Elwyn Ransom, but he's almost always referred to as Ransom. He is a professor, and he's out for a walking tour in the English countryside, I believe. And he is unable to find lodging where he wishes to find lodging, so he walks on in the evening. During his travel to the next potential lodging site, he runs across a woman whose son is working at a nearby mansion. She is very concerned because he's late, so he, partially selfishly hoping to earn himself a place to sleep for the night, but also partially in an effort to help out the woman, he agrees that he's going to go take a look and see if he can investigate and find out what happened to Harry, her son. So he does so, and he kind of has to sneak in a little bit to the mansion because no one's paying attention. He does find Harry. Harry is it's a little unclear to Ransom exactly what's happening because he doesn't have full context, but it seems like they're forcing him into somewhere he doesn't want to go. By they, I, of course, mean the two initial antagonists here, Divine and Weston, I believe their names are.
Yep.
And they say that he's having, he's a half-wit and he is freaking out about something or other, and they're just trying to make sure he's okay, and then they're going to send him on home. But, there's an air of something being wrong in Ransom's mind to this. So he kind of begrudgingly agrees to come on in, and they agree to send the kid home. Harry, yes. As it turns out, Divine is an old schoolmate of his who he did not particularly like back when they were younger. But nevertheless, he is very eager to find some place to sleep. So he goes in. As it turns out, he gets drugged by Divine, knocked out, and he comes to as he overhears Divine and Weston discussing basically an effort to kidnap him and make him go somewhere he doesn't want to go as a replacement for Harry, since they were caught while doing that. So he kind of tries to make an escape, is knocked unconscious, and when he next awakes, he is in a new place, which turns out to be a spacecraft headed towards, well, he doesn't know where, other than it's a planet in our solar system, and he overhears while, on the course of the weeks that they're up in the spaceship, he overhears Divine talking about how he's going to be turned over to, I believe, Sorn is the word used, which he has no idea what it is, but he does not like the idea of it based on the way it's being discussed. So he has discovered this, and the last thing he does, I believe, is steal a knife from the kitchen to be able to protect himself when they actually get to where they're going, which is not too far away. And that's where our 5th chapter more or less ends. So what did you guys think? Maybe, Dave, you want to go first and give some thoughts?
Yeah, I liked it. So far, so good. It's a little slow getting going, but that's kind of that's kind of the way Lewis does it. I feel is he gives you a lot of background information about what's going on. Like he describes the farms and stuff that Ransom's walking past, and he describes the a lot of detail about the rise, which is where Weston and Divine are, and it just takes a little while to get to the actual meat of what's going on. It starts off as just a guy walking down a road, which isn't particularly interesting, but it does create a lot of atmosphere, which I thought was really good. And then when he is on the spacecraft, you get a real good feeling for exactly what he's doing or what he's experienced or what he's experiencing. Like very little actually takes place in these first 5 chapters. I mean, other than, an abduction and then a journey to another planet. But the bulk of it is more just atmosphere. He is very thorough in describing Ransom's experiences and how his perception of what's happening changes as he gets more information. I think he does a really good job with that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I didn't remember this as well, but he does an interesting thing where he doesn't really. He takes a while to tell you what the reality of the place that Ransom is when he wakes up. I mean, you have a pretty good guess because it's a sci-fi novel, but he just basically describes everything that he experiences for a while before he has his stand-in Weston describe that they're in a little spaceship, or maybe it's Divine, but anyway, one of them describes that they're in a spaceship, but he describes Weston. the feeling that he gets when he's walking and what he sees and stuff like that. What did you think, Matt?
I liked it. I like the slower start of it, and I had a feeling he was about to be drugged when they opened the bottle of wine. It's like, oh, the wine's out.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a enjoyable. I listened to it, so it was an enjoyable listen. I liked, there was something about they're going to this planet, and they named the planet
Melicandria.
Yeah, he didn't know what that was, and they're like, well, that's what they call it. So I feel like we're about to dive into a lot more. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I love that part too when he's talking to was it Divine about the planet, and Divine's telling him about the name of what the real name of the planet is, and he says something to the effect of, well, how the deuce did you find out what its real name was? And I just love that. It was hard for me to like not think of that in Stewie's voice from Family Guy, but it's just like, the sort of the 30s language is fun because there's not really a whole lot of swearing, but they have to kind of find new ways of expressing themselves. But yeah, it was a fun read, and I really liked the how it starts off kind of slow, and you've got this character, and he's kind of on walkabout and just going loner, doing his own thing, and then he just kind of gets wrapped up in this plot. He doesn't really know and what's going on, but it starts to unravel, and the whole drugging scene was really. I liked the imagery of how they're. He just kind of feels like he keeps getting further and further away. And I don't know if any of you guys have been under anesthesia, but that's exactly what it feels like. It's like you're just in this long, long tunnel and everything's gone, going until it's gone.
It made sense that I couldn't hear him because he was what seemed to be a mile away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool stuff like that. And then, when he wakes up on the ship and there's, at first he thinks the planet is the moon, and they tell him it's the Earth, and he's got light on one side and dark on the other side, and he's just at first he's really disoriented, but then he kind of starts to like it a little bit. It's cool. I like what C.S. Lewis is doing here, and I kind of wish I would have read this sooner. I knew about it for a long time. I knew about the trilogy of books, but I just never got around to reading it. So it's good that we're doing this now.
Yeah, it turns out it's been sitting on my bookshelf for the last 15, 20 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Apparently Jamie picked it up at some point. Yeah, and I told her we were doing this, and she's like, "Oh, I have that book." That's good to know.
It's funny, Zach. You mentioned the what the deuce, that sort of like old timey. It's a very, very British book. I think the first words that when Ransom comes across Divine and Weston trying to cram Harry into the spacecraft is here, I say, which is like, it's very like Bertie Wooster, it's like, so like it's, and I also thought, I don't know if you guys were noticing this as much, but there seemed to be a lot of references, like as an issue he wants to kind of talk about, to the sort of colonialist past of England. There were just a lot of, and I'm trying to think of a specific example, but I think a lot of it was in the attitudes of Divine. Yep.
Yeah.
It's sort of subhuman, and like, well, there's the superiority, and then the
burdens of the white man.
Yeah, there was a lot of mentions of him, and how that was one of the reasons that yes, exactly, Ransom liked him at first when he was a teenager, and then like after like a few months he was like, oh, this guy's full of it, never mind, this guy sucks. It's that sort of like sort of like angsty, like teenage BS bravado about superiority and all this kind of crap that you find all over the internet these days. But yeah, and then there's this sort of thought of, their Divine just wants to make money. That's the only reason he's doing it. He just wants to make money off of this new location. And so they're doing whatever it is that they need to do to acquire money. And then the other thing I noticed was Weston, the scientist, he mentioned a couple of times that, for the greater good of discovery or success, small sacrifices like, the life of Ransom, for example, are a small penalty worth paying. This is sort of idea that the ends justifies the means, which I think is a lot of the religious justification for, bringing God to, whether it was, the New World in North America or in Africa, that was the sort of like cover. Oh, it's good for them. We're bringing them culture and religion and all these other things. So it's okay that we're, taking all their money and basically, putting them in an apartheid state. I thought that I did not notice that at all when I read it when I was younger, rather unsurprisingly. But yeah, it's it reminds me very much of Narnia and that sort of narrator's voice that C.S. Lewis uses very well, sort of very British and very sort of charming. That's one thing that popped out at me from rereading this so many years later.
Well, I had the benefit of having a British man read it to me, so it was literally in a British voice.
Were you listening to the same version, Matt?
I don't know. I got mine on YouTube because somebody had borrowed the book from the library already.
Yes, they had.
Yeah, you guys live close to each other. It's the same library now, isn't it?
Yep. Let's see if I can find the version. I don't know how to use this app.
Is it a British guy though, Matt? Who?
Yeah, it's a British guy, and the voice acting's really good.
Yeah, I was impressed.
So, quick question I've never really used. I mean, I remember when I was younger, like on cross country trips, listening to like Prairie Home Companion on tape. But with these sort of fiction novels, how much like voice acting is it for the different characters? Do they change the tones? Like, do they all have different voices for the different people, or?
There are subtle voices for like it's all the reader's voice, of course. But he does subtle changes for it. Like he'll do a more feminine voice for female characters, and he'll do for Harry he uses a more simple voice, if you will. And for Divine, you've got this arrogant voice, and Weston reminded me a lot of the Sheldon Cooper character, like just the monotone, matter of fact, absolute. Everything he says is the truth type voice. And then Ransom is more of the scholarly voice. So he does vary the voice a lot, but it's not there definitely are not different voice actors for it, because I believe that would take a whole production thing. And I actually had speaking of C.S. Lewis, I think I have a copy of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe where they have actually the whole series where they have voice actors act out the book, and it's a really good production. But this is not that. This is just a person reading it, and he does slightly different voices for each character.
Yeah, interesting. I in my sort of very marginal Wikipedia style research, I noticed that somebody said, who knows if this is true, that Ransom is he's a philologist, which is to say a student of language, which his C.S. Lewis's friend J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, was as well. And someone mentioned that he modeled the character after Tolkien. I don't know if that's absolutely true or not, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. Also, having a hero be a scholar of language is a very sort of C.S. Lewis type thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I thought it might be kind of nice to wrap up our podcast, unless anyone else wants to add anything else, with just some minor predictions for what might happen next. I will abstain since I have a vague memory of the arc of the story, but I don't know if you guys each want to toss out like, hey, what happens to Ransom when they get there? What's a Sorn? What are these creatures going to be like? That kind of thing.
Oh, I'll go first and say I don't really have a good idea what's going to happen. I think things are going to go a little sideways from what the two guys who kidnapped Weston are planning, though.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's going to be an interaction with the Sorns. I have no idea. I mean, he goes into great detail about Ransom's fears about what the Sorns are going to be, but gosh, I really don't know what to expect in that regard.
Do you think the handover will go smoothly?
No. My guess is Ransom tries to escape at some point.
Yeah, I hope that's what happens. I hope that he gets away and then he's kind of like stranger in a strange land trying to figure out what all these aliens and structures and things are. What I hope it's not is they're just like tentacle monsters and then there's like anal probing and stuff, because that would not be an enjoyable read.
Seems unlikely. But
that would be more of from an American perspective, I think.
Right. We're Japanese.
What are you talking about, Matt?
They like tentacles.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. Okay. I think that probably does it. And we'll just come back around next time and get the next chunk of the story and talk about it a little bit more.
Yep. We'll have another episode for you next week, hopefully.
I caught it on audio.